It was 12:03 a.m. and I was fast asleep, dreaming peacefully when the most terrifying sound jolted me awake. At first, I thought it was a stray animal, or maybe a neighbor's late-night mischief. But then I heard it. The unmistakable creak of my garage door slowly opening. My heart started pounding as I realized this wasn't normal. This was someone inside my property. I grabbed my phone, barely able to breathe, and peered through the blinds. To my absolute disbelief, I saw Karen, yes, that Karen, leading a small group of people in suits carrying flashlights, clipboards, and what looked like ritual candles. The HOA president, who had always been annoyingly strict about parking lines and grass height, was right behind her. They weren't here for a routine inspection or a complaint. They claimed they had heard a spirit inside my garage and were performing some sort of midnight ritual. I froze, my mind raced. How could this even happen? I had always kept my garage organized, my house peaceful, and my neighbors friendly. Yet here they were, breaking every rule of decency, claiming some supernatural authority to enter my home. I called out, but my voice trembled so much that it barely made it past the screen door. Karen didn't flinch. She waved at the HOA members, and they moved deeper into my garage like it was some haunted museum. I grabbed my phone and recorded everything. My heart was still racing, but I knew I needed evidence. Karen's expression was fierce, almost fanatical, like she truly believed a ghost was lurking behind my toolboxes. Every step she took, every whispered word, sent shivers down my spine. It was surreal, like I had stumbled into a horror movie, except it was happening in my real life, on my property. As they conducted their investigation, I realized that this wasn't just about a spirit. They wanted control. They wanted to scare me into submission, to prove that the HOA could dictate every inch of my life. I tried reasoning with Karen, asking her to leave, but she laughed. That laugh, the one that makes you question your sanity. And then she said the words that made my blood run cold. We have the right to protect the community, even from spirits. Hours later, after they finally left, I found a letter on my doorstep. The HOA was now suing me, citing resistance to community protection and interference with spiritual investigation. I couldn't believe it. From a peaceful life to a legal nightmare. All because Karen and the HOA thought my garage was haunted. The morning after the midnight intrusion felt like waking up in a nightmare that refused to end. My garage, which had always been my sanctuary, now seemed violated, tainted by the sheer audacity of Karen and the HOA. I couldn't shake the images of her holding those candles, whispering about protecting the community from spirits. I thought I had nightmares before, but nothing prepared me for this. Before I could even process what had happened, my mailbox was stuffed with legal papers. The HOA was officially suing me. The charges were absurd: resisting community protection, interference with HOA rituals, and even bizarrely, failure to maintain spiritual harmony on premises. Stared at the stack in disbelief. How could someone write this and think it was reasonable? My legal knowledge was minimal, but I knew this was going to be a battle like no other. I spent the entire day documenting everything. I gathered my security footage, time-stamped photos, and even audio recordings of Karen's chants and the HOA members murmuring about spirits. Each piece of evidence painted a clear picture. They had entered my property without permission, for reasons that made no sense, and now they were trying to twist it into a legal justification. I felt a mix of fear and anger bubbling inside me. How could people act so boldly, and yet have the nerve to sue me for defending myself? Neighbors, who had always quietly dealt with Karen's antics, started whispering about the incident. Some were sympathetic, others skeptical. One neighbor even admitted that Karen had attempted similar spiritual inspections on their property but was chased away. It was becoming clear. Karen wasn't just acting alone. She had weaponized the HOA, turning what should have been a simple homeowners association into a bizarre enforcement cult. Despite the absurdity, I knew I had to stay calm and strategic. I contacted a lawyer, explaining every detail, and even showed them my recordings. The lawyer laughed at the mention of protecting the community from spirits, but confirmed one thing. I had solid grounds to defend myself, and the HOA's case was weak at best. Still, knowing that Karen and her group could try anything next kept me on edge. Every creak, every knock at the door made me jump. That night, I lay awake thinking about what could happen next. Karen had proven that rules, logic, and common sense meant nothing when she and the HOA decided to enforce their version of community safety. My garage had been just the beginning. I couldn't imagine what escalation would come next, and the thought made my stomach churn. After the lawsuit papers arrived, things only escalated. I thought Karen and the HOA had reached the peak of their audacity, but I was wrong. It wasn't enough for them to break into my garage at midnight and then sue me. They needed to assert dominance, to make me feel like I had no safe space anywhere in my own home. The very next evening, I noticed a strange van parked across the street. No logos, no markings, just tinted windows. Inside, I could see several figures, HOA members, obviously scanning my property. I felt a mix of anger and fear. Karen had clearly organized some kind of surveillance. I could almost hear her voice. We have to make sure the spirit doesn't escape. The thought that this could escalate beyond a spiritual inspection and into full-on harassment sent shivers down my spine. Over the next few days, notes started appearing on my doorstep. Handwritten, each one declaring that I was disrupting the balance, and that Karen and the HOA had the right to intervene whenever necessary. The tone wasn't just intimidating, it was personal. It was as if Karen had made it her mission to turn my life into a living nightmare. I started checking locks obsessively, and even considered installing extra cameras, though it felt surreal that this level of protection was even necessary. In a normal neighborhood, then came the phone calls. Late at night, unknown numbers would ring, and when I answered, all I could hear was breathing, followed by Karen's unmistakable laughter. She seemed to be everywhere, monitoring every move, trying to wear me down mentally. Each interaction, no matter how small, reminded me that the HOA had transformed into a tool of her obsession. I realized this wasn't just about a garage, a spirit, or even a lawsuit. This was about control, and Karen thrived on it. I tried to reach out to other HOA members, hoping someone would intervene or at least acknowledge how out of control Karen had become. Most avoided me, pretending nothing had happened. It was as if the HOA had collectively decided to let Karen dictate the rules that defied reason, law, and basic human decency. I felt isolated, like I was standing alone against a storm that was growing stronger by the day. The culmination of these events came one Friday evening when Karen showed up in my driveway, alone this time, holding a clipboard and a single candle. Her calm demeanor made her presence even more chilling. She stared at me and said softly, almost serenely, "You can't hide from what we protect. The spirit is watching." I realized in that moment that this wasn't just intimidation. It was psychological warfare, and it was only going to get worse. The night after Karen stood in my driveway whispering about spirits, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. The creaking of the old trees outside, the hum of the refrigerator, even the ticking clock felt like warnings. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what form it would take. And then, right at 12 a.m., it began. The sound of footsteps echoed outside my window, slow, deliberate, not one pair, several. I rushed to the blinds and peered out. My stomach dropped. Karen wasn't alone this time. A full group of HOA members stood in a circle on my driveway, each holding a candle. Their faces were blank, expressionless, as if they were performing some bizarre ritual they had practiced for years. In the center stood Karen, her eyes cold and determined, clutching a thick binder labeled Community Spiritual Code, Section 7. I stepped outside, furious and exhausted. "This has to stop," I shouted, but Karen didn't even acknowledge my voice. Instead, she raised her candle and announced loudly, "We, the protectors of this community, hereby declare this property spiritually contaminated. We demand immediate access for cleansing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Contaminated? Cleansing? This was no longer absurd, it was dangerous. I pulled out my phone and hit record again, determined to document every insane second. Karen stepped closer, the candlelight flickering across her face, making her look even more sinister. "Your resistance," she said, "proves the spirit has influence over you. This is now a matter of community safety." Before I could reply, headlights appeared at the end of the street. A police car slowly rolled up. Finally, someone to put an end to this nightmare. 2 officers stepped out, clearly confused by the sight of grown adults, standing in ritual formation with candles. Karen marched toward them, waving her binder like it was a badge of authority. "Officers," she declared, "we require assistance. This homeowner is preventing us from conducting a spiritual extraction." The officers exchanged a look that said everything, disbelief mixed with concern. I explained the entire situation, how they broke into my garage, how they were now harassing me, how they were suing me for resisting an imaginary spirit. When I showed the officers the video evidence, their patience evaporated. After a tense exchange, the police ordered the HOA members to disperse immediately. Karen protested, yelling about ancient community rights, but the officers weren't having it. They warned her that any further trespassing or harassment would lead to charges, not against me, but against her. Karen's face twisted with defeat and rage as her ritual circle broke apart. The HOA members slowly backed away, their candles dimming one by one. For the first time, Karen had lost, The next morning, a new notice appeared on my door, not from Karen, but from the HOA board. Karen had been removed from her position, stripped of authority, and the lawsuit against me was officially withdrawn. My home was finally quiet again. No midnight intrusions, no surveillance, no rituals, just peace. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Your support helps more than you know.